Welcome back to Central Colorado Ballistics. My name is Wally. Last time we talked about survival, not just the cartridge, but of an idea. And I said next time we'd push that survival to the edge. Before we talk about animals though, we need to understand how the 45 stretched itself to meet extremes. Because you can't understand the edge without understanding how it got there. People talk about calibers like they're fashion trends. In one decade, they're essential. In the next, they're obsolete. 45 ACP was supposed to be one of those. Too big, too slow, too much recoil, too little capacity. And yet, designers never stopped chasing it. Not just one redesign, not one replacement, but an entire family. From compact duty pistols to magnum-level semi-autos, to suppressed rifles, to hunting cartridges shaped by state law. 45 didn't die. It fractured. And every fracture tells us something about technology, about institutions, and about what shooters actually wanted. This is the story of how one caliber refused to disappear and instead became many. Before we talk about the family, we need to discuss the idea. Because 45 was never just a number. It was a philosophy. At the turn of the century, designers weren't chasing speed. They were chasing certainty. Black powder had just been replaced by smokeless. Bullet construction was primitive. Expansion was unreliable. So designers leaned on diameter. If velocity failed, mass remained. A larger hole, more momentum, predictable penetration. That thinking gave us the 45 ACP. But what most people miss is this. 45 ACP wasn't meant to evolve. It was meant to solve a problem permanently. And for decades, it did. Then the problem moved. Not because 45 stopped working, but because everything around it changed. Polymer frames, double-stack magazines, improved metallurgy, and eventually modern hollow points. Suddenly, velocity mattered more. Capacity mattered more. Shooter endurance mattered more. Institutions adapted. But designers didn't abandon the 45. They asked a different question. What if the idea was right, but the package was wrong? That question gave birth to the first split. In the early 2000s, Glock faced a problem. They had a 45, the Glock 21, but it was big. Too big for many hands, too big for some agencies, too big for uniform grip standards. So Glock didn't ask for a new caliber. They asked for a shorter one. Enter the 45 GAP or the Glock automatic pistol. It wasn't built inside Glock alone. The cartridge itself was developed by Ernest Durham of CCI Spear, working directly with Glock engineers. The timeline was tight. Early 2002, concept. 2003, production. The mission was simple. Match 45 ACP performance in a shorter cartridge. Same bullet diameter, similar performance, shorter case. To make it work, Engineers strengthened the case web and raised operating pressures. The result? 45 class terminal ballistics in a 9mm size grip frame. On paper, it worked, and for a moment institutions noticed. The New York State Police, Florida Highway Patrol. But here's the catch. The GAP solved an ergonomic problem, right as bullet technology made that problem irrelevant. 9mm improved. Recoil dropped. Qualification scores rose. And the 45 GAP became a solution to a question that no one was asking anymore. It didn't fail. It arrived late. Not every designer wanted smaller. Some wanted more, much more. In 1997, Johnny Rowland asked a dangerous question. There's an old line often attributed to Texas Rangers. Why carry a 45? Because they don't make a 46. Rowland decided to fix that. The answer was the 460 Rowland. What if a semi-auto didn't stop at 45 ACP? The answer was the 460 Rowland. A lengthened, reinforced, high-pressure evolution of the 45 ACP. But the extra power came with a problem. At 40,000 psi, this could never be fired in a standard 45 ACP chamber. So, the case was lengthened. Not dramatically, just enough. Enough that it physically cannot chamber in a standard 45 ACP barrel. Because without that safeguard, you'd have a grenade operating at nearly 40,000 psi. For background, 45 ACP runs around 21,000 psi. 45 Super pushes closer to 30. 460 Rowland goes further. This wasn't incremental. It was intentional escalation. Almost double the standard 45 ACP. This wasn't duty ammunition. This was Magnum territory. And yet, it fit in a 1911. Rowland didn't do it alone. Clark Custom Guns built the first serious conversion systems. Starline produced the brass. This wasn't a wildcat experiment in the garage. It was engineered to survive. With the right compensator, springs, and barrel, the compensator wasn't cosmetic. It slowed slide velocity, reduced battering on the frame. Without it, the gun wouldn't live very long. A semi-auto could now push a 44 magnum-level energy. This wasn't about capacity. It was about limits. Hunters noticed. Wilderness carriers noticed. Because unlike revolvers, a 460 Rowland pistol could still feed a 45 ACP. One platform, two personalities. This wasn't a replacement. Not that 45 was inadequate, but that it had more to give. That changes the tone from rebellion to evolution. It was a statement. Then, 45 left handguns entirely. In the late 1990s, after Mogadishu, questions were being asked about enemies who didn't go down, about 5.56 passing through without immediate effect. The request was simple. More authority inside the same platform, about intermediate calibers, about barrier defeat, about immediate stopping power. The solution wasn't speed. It was mass. Marty Terwimu of Tapo Jitsu and Tony Romer of Tromix delivered the 458 SOCOM. Conceived in the year 2000, refined and prototyped in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. The first working rifle wasn't theory. It ran. A big bore cartridge that fit inside an AR-15 platform, built from a modified 50 Action Express case. Cut down, reshaped, engineered to feed from standard AR magazines. No new lower receiver. No new rifle. Just a barrel, bolt, and gas system change. Same bolt face, different mission. Heavy bullets, subsonic capability, suppressor compatibility. 300-grain projectiles moving near 1,900 feet per second. Around 2,400 foot-pounds of energy from an AR-15. This was 45 philosophy applied to modern warfare. Designed for short-range engagements. Urban environments, barrier penetration, suppressed work. And later, wild hogs and thick brush. Not spray, impact. Not faster, heavier, decisive. And once again, 45 adapted without asking permission. The final split didn't come from war. It came from a regulation. Midwestern hunting laws restricted bottleneck rifle cartridges. Straight wall only. The idea wasn't new. Gun writer Jeff Cooper had long imagined a concept he called the thumper, a 44 caliber or larger round in an AR-15 platform. Not for distance, for authority. Designers responded, not with speed, but with diameter. 450 Bushmaster. Originally developed in 2007 by Tim Legrand of Lemag Firearms, it began life under a different name. The 45 Professional, built for a shortened .284 Winchester case, straight-walled, heavy, and deliberate. Using 452 bullets the same diameter as a .45 Colt. When the design was licensed to Bushmaster, Hornady stepped in to manufacture the ammunition. They shortened the case slightly to fit the 250 grain FTX bullet. That refinement created the final form we know now as 450 Bushmaster. Big energy, short range, legal compliance. And in 2008, the SAAMI approved it. This wasn't a niche workaround anymore. It was standardized. This wasn't a tactical cartridge. It was a civilian one. Proof that 45 didn't just survive institutions. It didn't fight the law. It adopted to it and thrived inside it. It survived lawmakers. Look at the pattern. Every time the problem changed, 45 changed with it. Grip size, pressure, platform, law. 45 didn't chase trends. It filled gaps. That's why it never unified again. It didn't need to. One diameter, many answers. So no, 45 never made a comeback because it never left. It simply stopped pretending there was one perfect answer. Calibers don't survive because they win arguments. They survive because they keep solving problems. And 45 solved more than just one. Let me know where we go next. Freedom secured, rights defended.